Ready? Good evening, councillors, council officers, gallery and anyone watching online, and welcome to our June ordinary meeting of council. To begin with, I'd like the General Manager to make announcements regarding the live streaming of the meeting tonight.
The meeting is being live streamed and or recorded for on-demand viewing via Council's website. Attendance at the meeting is to be taken as consent by a person to their image and or voice being webcast. All speakers should refrain from making any defamatory comments or releasing personal information about another individual without their consent. Council accepts no liability for any damage that may result from defamatory comments made by persons attending meetings. All liability will rest with the individual who made the comments. The meeting must not be recorded by others without prior written consent of the Council in accordance with Council's Code of Meeting Practice. Councillors and staff are obligated to declare conflicts of interest as required under the Local Government Act 1993 and Council's adopted Code of Conduct. Councillors are reminded of their oath of office, whereby they have declared and affirmed that they will undertake the duties of office of councillor in the best interests of the people of Wentworth Shire and the Wentworth Shire Council, and they will faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in them under the Local Government Act 1993 or any other act to the best of their ability and judgment. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. I'd ask everybody who is able to be upstanding for the prayer and acknowledgement of country, please. I'd like to pay my respect and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. We give thanks for this day and for the opportunity to work together. May we represent all members of our community fairly. We seek blessings on our meeting here this evening. Amen. Please be seated. Okay, I have received apologies from Councillor McAllister and Councillor Cooper for this evening. Thank you. Moved Councillor Nichols, seconded Councillor Crisp. Are there any requests for leave of absence? There being none, I'll move on to disclosures of interest. Does anybody have any disclosures? Councillor Beaumont?
I will make mention of the fact that we are discussing the Wentworth Regional Tourism and Events Strategy document this evening. I am the President of Wentworth Regional Tourism, so I don't believe it to be a conflict of interest, and certainly not a pecuniary conflict of interest.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay. Move on to item 5, confirmation of the minutes. Is someone prepared to move? Councillor Rodder, seconded Councillor Beaumont. Is there any discussion? Thank you. Those in favour of accepting the minutes? Thank you. That is carried.
Mr Mayor,
Councillor Crisp.
I move that Council move into public forum for the purposes of hearing the people who wish to address Council this evening.
Thank you. Seconded Councillor Nichols. Those in favour? Thank you. Thank you for that. So we are holding a public forum this evening for the purposes of item 9.9. The speakers that we will hear from this evening are for the applicant, James Goldsworthy, and against the item is Roy Costa and Brenton Jardine. So each speaker will be given 3 minutes. Councillors will have the opportunity to ask the speakers questions, but there's no obligation for the speakers to answer the questions. And speakers at public forums cannot ask questions of councillors or staff. So, and I'll just advise as a general point, I am aware that this item is a little sensitive, so I just remind speakers to please speak to the issue of planning and refrain from any defamatory language Thank you, and I'd now invite James Goldsworthy to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If you'd like to use that microphone, James, that would be...
Okay, take a seat here.
If that suits you.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. This application is for a two-lot subdivision only, and the subdivision is being undertaken by way of boundary realignment. There is no development or change of use or anything of the like proposed. The land is in use, and there is occupancy by the owner where the land is going to be consolidated. So there's no change in terms of the overall operations of the land. Prior to lodgement of the application, we wrote to council and sought confirmation that in fact this proposal was exempt development, therefore not requiring development consent. There was not agreement in relation to that, despite the fact that we provided correspondence to that effect and provided an example of a similar proposal where council agreed to such a proposal being undertaken by a consent exempt development SEP. So as you can understand, it's quite a simple sort of a proposal being undertaken by way of boundary realignment. So that correspondence really did deal with, I suppose, the minor nature of this proposal, and in addition to that, there has been decisions of the Land Environment Court that agreed with our position, I suppose, and whilst it's not something that is entirely relevant, I suppose there's a couple of cases that we wish to quote, which is McCabe v Blue Mountain, so I'm happy to provide this to council, and another one where Barnes versus Dugon Council, where the court basically identified matters in relation to small-scale nature of boundary realignments and why development consent was not or is not required. So I suppose council must understand that, as I said, the proposal is permissible, given the fact that we've taken the position to lodge an application. There is council discretion for this proposal, and there's no change as a result of the subdivision on the ground. It's merely a paper change by way of the development plan, deposited plan being changed. As councillors will be aware, the nature of the subdivision as it stands at the moment is quite unusual. There's part of one lot, which is quite a large lot, separate and subject to, fronting the river. And we can only guess as to why that proposal was considered appropriate at the time, and why it was considered to be a reasonable sort of a planning or a subdivision to be undertaken. The fact of the matter is we're trying to, I suppose, make a better planning outcome by consolidating that small parcel of land with the adjoining land, and there is no change in relation to access to the objector's land, in that there is an existing easement and for carriageway purposes, and that will continue to be the case. What we say is that the proposal is consistent with the function of the land, the rural nature of the land, and we also say that the proposal is consistent with the primary production zone, which applies to the land.
Thank you, James.
Can I just make maybe two more points, Mr. Mayor? Just quickly. I hadn't taken the opportunity to respond to the objections, but I suppose it's a case of the fact of the matter is that we're dealing with planning matters and a subdivision only, and like I say, it's a paper change, and that is consistent with decisions of the court. It's consistent with the LEP. It's permissible, and there is no on-the-ground change. So happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, James. Councillors, do you have any questions for Mr Goldsworthy? Councillor Nichols.
Mr Goldsworthy, my question is, if correspondence was sent in, is it part of our document? And if not, why haven't we seen it? That'll be to one of the officers, please.
Yeah, sorry, which document?
Well, you said there was correspondence sent, which made your which made your application clear and simple. I don't believe I've seen a copy of that correspondence.
I can clarify, Mr Mayor.
Thanks.
So that correspondence was prior to lodgement of the application and didn't form part of the application because we took the position that in fact the proposal was exempt development. Council took a contrary view and felt that in fact a development consent was required, and so therefore we have acted upon the advice of Council by lodging a development application, and Council have all of that material before them.
Thanks, councillor. Any further questions? Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay. Microphone, please.
Lost the appropriate page, bear with me.
Microphone.
One point in here, James, I'm sorry, oh, here it is.
Brian, just pop the microphone on.
Sorry, James, on page 15 of your statement of environmental effects, about the 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth point down, you state realignment boundary. The realignment boundaries maintain the ability to conduct agriculture and or other rural pursuits. I'm just wondering what might be meant by that because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the zoning is RU1 primary production. I'm just wondering what other rural pursuits might actually be.
Sure. I suppose the purpose of making such reference is due to the nature of the zoning of the land being primary production, and the fact is that there are a number of, what I suppose a planning term almost, in that there's a number of different sorts of developments or land use that can be undertaken on the land which are as of right without requiring a permit. And that is a general statement in relation to those sorts of activities being able to be undertaken on the land.
So it's not inferring anything other than agricultural activity?
No. I suppose it's just generally stating the fact that the land is included within that zone and identified for such purposes, and those purposes can be undertaken on the land more often than not without any further consent from council.
Okay. So just in relation to the mapping that would be provided, it would appear that the property, which I believe to be owned by the Jardines, would be enveloped, so to speak, apart from an easement or carriageway. Would that carriageway likely to be fenced?
So we're not changing anything in relation to the easement and the, if you like, the enveloping of the land. So that's remaining the same. We're consolidating that portion of land with the adjoining land. So the easement's not changing now. As for the fencing or otherwise of that easement, I can't say whether or not that will be the case. And I suppose from a practical perspective, the easement could be, or fencing of the land could be undertaken, let's just say either side of the easement. And then also that land would need to be fenced in order to operate some form of agricultural pursuits, which is currently the case. So there's no proposal for there to be any sort of further fencing as far as I'm aware of, and the fact of the matter is that fencing doesn't require any sort of development consent or council permission. And then just finally, in relation to the easement, the easement, as I understand it, is a carriageway easement, and there's legal obligations in relation to that outside of, this planning application and, that of the LEP. So there's obligations afforded to the beneficiaries of that easement, which is the land to the south, which it connects, and those that sort of right of use. There's a legal obligation for that to continue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No? Thank you very much, James.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, I'll invite, I think, Roy, you're going to speak first. Thank you. If you could just use the microphone and
No worries.
proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Firstly, I'll just refer to the applicant's presentation before you, and I think the most of it's irrelevant. He referred to you about not requiring a DA. The applicant referred to you court cases. We're here, there's an application before you to be considered. Council has determined it requires a DA. So the court cases referred to and the previous discussions are irrelevant to this application. In essence, what we're requesting tonight is councillors either refuse the application or lay it on the table and get accurate information before you make a decision. The reason for that is we believe the application is misleading. If you look at, it's fine to just say this is a boundary realignment, but if you look at the documentation submitted to council, on page 12 of the Statement of Environmental Effects lodged with the application, the applicant states that there's a dwelling, associated outbuildings on that land, and sheds. They're all illegal. And if council makes a decision and supports this realignment, we believe technically you're also acknowledging and accepting that these buildings on this land are legal. They're not. So we say council should foremost request further information and get accurate information before determining this application. Because as my client will advise you, there is conflict existing. Council is fully aware of it between the two residents, but one is illegal. And they're now looking at realigning the boundaries. So that information before you is not accurate. We also put to you that if you go through the actual LEP provisions of the Wentworth Local Environmental Plan, there are matters that council must consider. And they are, does the subdivision, development consent must not be granted unless the consent authority, which is council, is satisfied that the subdivision will not create the potential for land use conflict. It's existing now. Yes, it can be put to you that the uses aren't changing, but a conflict exists, and if this boundary moves around and surrounds my client's land, there is definitely potential for land use conflict. And they've been experiencing it for 3 years, so to move the boundary and put it surrounding my client's whole land, we're saying it should not be supported. Again, and I'll refer specifically, clause 4.2D states that council must not grant development consent unless it's satisfied the subdivision not create the potential for land use conflict, and clearly it will. So we request that council at the foremost, don't make a decision tonight until you get accurate information, or we believe you must refuse it because there is definitely potential for land use conflict. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Roy. Councillors, is there any questions for Mr Costa? Okay, thank you very much. I'll now invite Brenton. If you could take a seat and use the microphone there also, please. And you'll also have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. My name's Brenton Jardine. I was born in Oyen to honest and hard-working parents with a farming background, so I can suggest I know a lot about farming. I also know a lot about machinery and what it should be used for and what it shouldn't be used for. Now, I'm just going to support what Roy said with the conflict. So my wife and I and 2 young children, Nate, who's 9 years old, and Jed, who's 4, moved to 34 Codmore Road 3.5 years ago. At the time, there was a black caravan parked on the riverbank next to us. We were told when we purchased that property that they were retirees that were travelling around Australia and they were just using that property as a base camp. over the next 12 months, we witnessed more machinery, large machinery sheds, constant earthworks every day. The noise, the dust was just unbearable. We kept our mouth shut and didn't say a thing for 18 months until it got to the point where we couldn't put up with it anymore. The health effects to me, my wife and my two children, is just ridiculous. And I put it to the councillors tonight that here I'm holding a apprehended personal violence order for 2 years, and it's been upheld, so that 2 years has been extended. There's a second assault charge upon me with a 12-month good behaviour bond because there was no criminal record. Throughout the last 8 months, I've spent 5 months in court defending my firearms licence, as that is 90% of my wife and I's income. I've paid lawyers to defend this. The lies were unbearable, and luckily the truth comes out in court and both cases were chucked out straight away. What we've suffered through the last 18 months, I just can't stress enough how much help we need. I've pleaded with council to help and I've got no help at all. James Adams, the previous compliance officer, ordered a cease and desist letter for all the machinery to leave 372 Low Darling Road because I showed him footage that would make anybody sick. And all the machinery immediately left 372 Low Darling Road, which is registered as an earthworks company. Soon after, James Adams, from what I understand, was fired and the machinery come back. Now there's a full-scale earthworks operation being conducted 47 metres from our house, our dwelling, our home, and we're at the stage where we cannot live there anymore. It's bad enough being on the west side. We cannot have it to the north and to the east. We'll do everything to stop it, whatever it takes. Thank you.
Thanks, Brenton.
Are there any questions? Because honestly, on this subject, I'm a wealth of knowledge, so please ask all the questions you want. I've seen it all firsthand.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brenton. Okay, if I could get I'll seek a mover back into...
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the council move back into our ordinary council meeting.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Rodder, all in favour? Thank you, that is carried. We'll move to item 6, outstanding matters from previous meeting. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Rodder, seconder. Councillor Nichols. Is there any discussion? I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you, that is carried. Item 7, I move my mayoral report, item 7.1, seconded Councillor Crisp. Are there any questions? All those in favour? Thank you. Would someone like to move item 7.2? Councillor Crisp, seconded Councillor Beaumont. A report on the Western Divisions of Council Cobar, which was attended by myself, Councillor Crisp and the General Manager. Are there any questions?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I take the report as read and happy to take questions.
Thank you. All those in favour? The item is carried. Item 7.3, would you like to move that, Councillor Beaumont? That's your report.
Yep.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Crisp. would you like to speak to your report?
No, look, happy to take any questions if there are any. I've provided a very brief summary of the notes that I took at that forum. I think possibly, if anything, council should consider lodging some feedback in relation to the draft document, particularly around water security risks for our Shire. That would be my only comment.
Thank you, councillor. All those in favour of accepting the report?
Have a question if I can,
Certainly,
Mr. Mayor.
councillor Elstone.
Just to Councillor Beaumont, was the sort of focus around it more on town water than more so than irrigation and that type of thing?
More rural irrigation, a lot of discussion, quite a bit of discussion about irrigation, big development of large high water usage crops like almonds, that sort of thing. So a lot of discussion around sustainability and river health. And it wasn't primarily to do with the Murray, of course, and the tributaries, but we did creep into the area of talking about the Darling and what we've had to endure over the last six to 8 months.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. In that case, Mr. Mayor, I think we should express a bit of disappointment. Back to the department. On the back of your text, Councillor Beaumont went and Howard Jones went. Not one of those Southwestern water users, the irrigator groups, nobody knew the meeting was on.
Correct. Yep, I think that view's been expressed back to the department because, yeah, I guess the attendance speaks for itself, but no one seemed to be aware of it.
Well, it's pretty hard, and I think we should emphasise it because what happens now is they go back and say they've consulted, and that's all well and good, but how do you consult when you don't invite anyone? And that's one of the big issues around all this water stuff. They turn up and have a meeting and nobody knows they're on.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, Councillor Elstone, that those sentiments were conveyed on the day, and the question asked actually by Mr.
Jones.
Howard, that where are all the industry representatives, to which there was just pretty much a shrug of shoulders. I only became aware of the forum through the Sunraysia Daily.
Thank you. Those in favour? That is carried. Item 8, reports from committees. We have item 8.1, the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, there for noting. Someone could move that. Councillor Rodder, seconded Councillor Beaumont. Anyone wish to speak? All those in favour of accepting the report? Thank you. That is carried unanimously. Item 9.1, the General Manager's Report. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Crisp, seconded Councillor Rodder. Sorry, Tim, I'll get you next time. Are there is there any discussion? Councillor Crisp.
Mr Mayor, to the General Manager, 19th of June meeting with Matt Coulter, SES Far West. Anything of interest, particularly in the some of the post-flood issues that are still lingering in some of our minds?
No discussion in relation to flooding in that particular meeting, or it was more about resourcing of the Wentworth Brigade for SES and possible identification of future site up in and around the Baronga Golgol area.
Councillor Rodder.
So in regards to the 24th of June meeting for Light State and FOSO, have we got an update on that, please?
Thank you, Councillor.
Works in progress in terms of continuation of the project. I don't recall any direct things, but the general discussion has been around how we continue on with the project and and identify some funding opportunities to close the gap on that missed out funding opportunity we had through growing regions. So still works in progress.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor Nichols.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On June the 4th, the meeting with the Blue Gas Technologies driving Mildura's hydrogen mobility. Interested in what might have happened there.
The Mayor and I attended a forum at the Sunny TAFE. In essence, a company is promoting their wares in terms of the possible sustainable use of hydrogen as an energy or a possible source of fuel for vehicles. In that, while there was general talk around the table, there was transport operators, there was us, there was Department of Regional New South Wales, varying degrees within the audience, and then subsequent to that, the main question is, would it be welcome as part of our Shire? And we're still working with them as we speak.
Did they throw any cost scenarios at you? Or cost savings?
Savings, I don't think, is a word I'd put to use it, Councillor. More likely the transport industry were obviously of the asking question is what is the cost comparison, but how far does a truck go on a litre of diesel versus a litre of hydrogen? So I think it's, once again, there's matters to be resolved and further progressed, and my role is not about that as such, but still working with them as a proponent to see if there's any identified issues or possible sites within our Shire.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, the discussion from their perspective was probably more around they've got a technology that they say is used in other parts of the world, requires a food source of waste, and they've identified two hydrogen highways as such. So one is the Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane East Coast route, and the other is the cross-continental route, say Adelaide, Sydney. So they've sort of identified this as a potential area for producing the product. But yeah, the demand side is yet to be tested, I'd suggest. Councillor Rodder.
Just a quick question in regards to the next Carramar Drive Users Group meeting, so that's not listed in the upcoming. Have we got a date for that, Hannah, Jeff? Carramar Drive Users Group?
It will be. I'm unsure what it is.
There will be a meeting. Any further questions? All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. We'll move to item 9.2, consolidating current visitors information centre with the Rotary Op Shop and management of the old Wentworth Jail. We have a report and a recommendation. Moved Councillor Rodder, seconded Councillor Beaumont. Is there anyone wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Beaumont.
I guess I'd just like to ensure that there will be a service agreement established between Shire and Rotary in relation to those both those points. The Rotary Club operating the jail and also the Civic Centre.
Not the Civic Centre, Councillor Beaumont, but
Oh, okay.
I think we'd take them on board for the jail and the memorial rooms, being the op shop, yes.
Okay, would it include the old Civic Centre?
Thank you. Any further speakers? Put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. And in doing so, I wish the former operator of the jail all the best, and wish the incoming Rotary Club all the best in managing that site. I think it's a great synergy for council. Item 9.3. The draft Wentworth Region Tourism and Events Strategy 2024-2029. Would someone like to move a motion? Councillor Beaumont.
I would like to move an alternative motion to the one listed.
Which is?
And that being that Council defer the community consultation process of this draft Wentworth Region Tourism and Events Strategy 24 to 29 to allow a review of initiatives, actions and stakeholders before being endorsed for community consultation.
Thank you. Is the motion seconded? Councillor Rodder, thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would. Excuse me. Look, I'd just like to acknowledge the work that Peter Turner and of Customer Frame Consultancy has done in preparation of this draft document. I believe the document is fair and reasonable in its evaluation of our current situation and importantly identifies opportunities for improvement and potential actions potential actions recommended. Just a couple of points I'd like to speak to. One in particular being that I'm heartened by the recognition within the report of the potential of partnering with adjacent regions and the mutual benefits that would follow. In this respect, I draw Councillors' attention to page 15 of the report, which refers to formalised collaboration in adjacent regions. In this request, I personally see enormous potential in partnering with our neighbours, particularly along the Darling River Run. This is something I've spoken to on numerous occasions within this chamber. In terms of the actions and apportioning of stakeholder responsibilities, whilst I agree with the majority of individual actions proposed, the nominated primary stakeholder responsibilities listed requires some review. Wentworth Regional Tourism is identified as the primary stakeholder of no less than 8 actions within the various initiatives, with supporting responsibility of another 11 actions. It must be pointed out that Wentworth Regional Tourism is a volunteer not-for-profit group made up of members of various businesses and tourism operations within and around our Shire. Wentworth Regional Tourism has no paid personnel and limited volunteer capacity. Whilst WRTI is always willing to assist in any way physically possible, it does not have the financial or personnel resources to take on the responsibilities of the actions identified within the report. So it's for that reason that I've moved that new motion.
Thanks, Councillor Beaumont. Does anyone wish to speak against the motion?
Perhaps, Mr Mayor, I seek some clarification from Councillor Beaumont that obviously you want the review to take place. In what format or what process would you like to see employed in that review?
Well, I think it's a strategic document that probably requires review by a whole of councillors in an advisory meeting to unpick the various initiatives and responsibilities and action items that are listed to determine where the actual responsibility lies with which stakeholder should some of those actions be picked up. Primarily, I would say the vast majority being the responsibility of Wentworth Shire Council. It may be that in going through the various initiatives and actions that we actually prune or even prioritise, because there's a lot of them, and I don't know how we would be able to, with our staffing EFT available, how we could actually even address the initiatives that are being suggested.
Councillor Crisp.
To the General Manager, in order to do this, do we need to re-engage the services of the consultant in this report? I'm just worried about, can we change it without consulting the consultant?
At the end of the day, it's a council-owned document, and I'd think that it's not untoward or out of... Yeah, it's appropriate that we review it and hold a workshop to do so, and then the findings of that may be conveyed back into the consultant for their point of view. But the reality is, you as a councillor trying to put a document on public exhibition that will represent the future needs and desires and wishes of of our community. So at this point in time, I'd suggest that an internal working advisory committee group meeting would be fine.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 9.4, the monthly finance report for May 2024. Is there a mover? Councillor Rodder. Seconded Councillor Elstone. Are there any questions? Councillor Rodder and then Councillor Nichols.
On page 95, so there's quite a large amount of doubtful debts. Can we have a bit of an explanation as to what makes up that figure, please, the Director of Finance?
That's actually in the next report, so I'll
Yeah,
talk to that in the next report.
We'll hold that one over. Good.
More than happy to talk to about it, but I think we should refrain it to that report.
Councillor Nichols.
Again, overtime and travelling seems to be burgeoning. Is there any really particular reason why this is happening, particularly in some areas? The figures are very, very high. I know we're doing roadworks and so on and so forth, but it's we employ people 38 hours a week, and I have concerns that if we may need to be employing more people and pay them the correct amount of money rather than go to overtime.
Director Gunn.
I may be able to address some of that question. I note that this is for a 3-paid period, so that's counting for 6 weeks. A majority of the larger overtime work for roads is predominantly all associated with grant-funded works, and a majority of that work there is the project at Arumpo Road for the earthworks. So given the location there and the travel time to and from, because obviously there's no camping like there was at Poonkerry, to maximise the work hours throughout the day. The other notable one is the water and wastewater, and there was, during that pay period, a number of nighttime shutdowns for installation of water infrastructure and replacement of valves. So that necessitated a number of the crew over, I think, 3 or 4 periods there. So that would account for that one. So that accounts for a number of the larger overtime periods in that particular report.
Thank you, Director. Any further questions? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. And we'll move to item 9.5. Councillor Rodder, monthly investment report for May 2024. Moved. So moved. Seconded. Councillor Crisp. Your question, Councillor Rodder.
The same question that I asked to the wrong point. So the doubtful debts, please, Simon.
Certainly, Councillor Rodder. So this is basically an accounting estimation that we have to do at the end of each year. There's no specific debt that it relates to. What we're required to do under the standards is basically based on what our money owed to us at the 30th of June, and then we take into account payment history to work out what we think potentially may not ever be received. It obviously fluctuates year to year depending on the amount that we have outstanding at the 30th of June. So the last couple of years that figure has been slightly higher than normal because we've been waiting for payments and reimbursements of grants and whatnot. So yeah, there's no one specific debtor or what that you could actually attribute that figure to.
Thank you. So just in regards to the grants, though, the grant unexpended grants amount is quite large as well.
Yeah, so our grants are paid one of 2 ways. Either we get given a substantial amount or fully paid up front and we spend it over the course of the grant, or the other ways is that we actually spend the money first and then get reimbursed in arrears. So the amounts that were impacting what we were owed at the 30th of June were for those ones where we have done the works, and we're now claiming reimbursement for it in arrears, as per the terms of the funding agreements.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Councillor Beaumont.
Yeah, just one in relation to the female jockey rooms. There's still a fair amount sitting there. Is that project complete and all payments made in relation to the project? I guess, in other words, is that an available balance for return or transfer to another project?
I'll need to refer to Jeff as to whether the project's been completed or not.
To my understanding, the project is complete. I'm unsure if all the final invoices and payments have been made, but it's my understanding from the completion of that project that there was the project was completed and there was still money left over from the grant. Yes.
Yeah, so then to answer your question, whatever we haven't spent, we'll have to return back to. In other instances, we have the opportunity to potentially reallocate that to other projects, but that funding round is finishes at the end of this financial year, so there's no opportunities to seek variation to apply it to somewhere else.
Thank you. Is that your hand up, Councillor Elstone? No?
No.
Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll move to item 9.6, determination of councillor remuneration for the 2023-24 year. I think that'll be 24-25. So I'll need a mover of a recommendation, please. Councillor Rodder, what would you like to move?
I would like to see that council sets the level of fees to be paid to the council of Severe in accordance with the schedule of fees determined by the local government remuneration tribunal, which is to increase the fee by the maximum 3.75%.
Thank you. Are you nominating the figure for councillor and for mayor?
Yeah, so it's option A, Mr Mayor.
Right there, option A. Thank you. Is that motion seconded? Councillor Crisp, is there any discussion? I will put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. That is carried unanimously. Item 9.7, adoption of the 22-26 delivery program and the 24-25 operational plan. Could I seek a mover? Councillor Rodder. Seconder? Councillor Crisp. Is there anyone wish to speak for the recommendations? Councillor Rodder.
Can I ask a question first, Mr Mayor, please?
Please.
So in regards to the residential category, there's Golgol and Golgol East, but when I went to the locality maps that deal with those areas, it wasn't really clear on the separation between those two rateable areas. They've got a slightly different ordinary rate in the dollar. I'd just like to have a bit more clarification.
The creek. So Golgol Creek is the separation. So Golgol East is on the other side of the...
So the Trentham Cliffs side of the creek?
Yes.
I don't know if it's adequately reflected in the map.
I will take that under advisement and look at having it potentially redone.
Thank you. Councillor Beaumont.
Yes, to page 206, which refers to swimming pools and admission charges. Just wondering whether we could have an update on where discussions might be with Belgravia in relation to an admittance fee for supervising adults in swimming pools. At the May meeting, I made the suggestion that we should be encouraging more adult supervision of children at the pools and also encouraging children to use the municipal pools rather than swimming in the rivers and jumping off bridges, etc. So I'm just wondering where that discussion might be.
Yeah, no, we can provide an update. And to be honest, we probably misconstrued a little bit what you asked. We thought you were asking to waive all all fees, not just for non-swimming adults. So our discussions and the discussions that Jeff's team's been having with Belgravia has been around not charging anybody to to go into the pool. So we'd have to potentially go back to them and see whether they're able to narrow down just as to how many passes they actually sell or charge for people who are actually just supervising. But yeah, the reality would be that if we made a decision on that, they would see that as some lost income, which they would want to recoup. So all what they would be then wanting to do is add that as a variation to their management fee that they charge us each season to look after the pools.
I would prefer actually for there to be no charge for adults or children to use the pools, but as a fallback, if that discussion doesn't progress, at least having no charge for supervising adults would be a step in the right direction.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Nichols.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've raised this before and I'll raise it again. I have concerns that we're going the full hog of 5% on sewage and water. We have a little under 17 million in the kitty for that. I know we're doing significant works. However, a lot of that money that's sitting there has been paid for by the people at the moment who are in severe distress, and I have huge concerns with that, so I just need to pass on my concerns.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rodder.
So just as mentioned earlier in the briefing, if we could just clarify the annual approval fee for temporary event mobile foods, please.
Yep, we can do that. Yep, we can do that. Yep.
Thank you. Okay, I will put the motion. Those in favour, please. Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Councillor Nichols, you'd like your vote recorded. Thank you. Item 9.8, disclosure of interest returns. We have a recommendation for noting the reports attached. Is there a mover? Councillor Rodder. Councillor Elstone, seconded. Is there any discussion? I'll put the question. Those in favour? The motion is carried. We'll move to item 9.9, the subject of our public forum this evening. That is a two-lot boundary adjustment, Lot 5 DP 1253993 and Lot 3 DP 1250369 Pomona. Is there a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Crisp, is there a seconder? Cannot proceed to debate without a seconder. Councillor Beaumont. Open for discussion. Would someone like to speak for the motion? Or a question? Councillor Elstone.
Mr Mayor, in the circumstances, perhaps I might move to defer the motion until we can do a bit more homework and have a look at it. I really do struggle with the difference between an adjustment and a realignment. I don't see it as an adjoining property, but I accept the changes to the adjustment rules, but I think we need to do a bit more homework on it and perhaps review it again once we've got some more information.
Councillor Elstone, are you moving an amendment?
I am, that we defer it until such time as we do that.
Councillor Elstone has moved that this item be deferred. Is the amendment seconded? Councillor Nichols? Would anyone like to speak to the amended motion? Would anyone like to speak against the amended motion? I'll put the amended motion. Those in favour? The motion is carried. Now that becomes the motion. I'll now put the motion as amended. Those in favour? Carried unanimously.
You need a division?
That was carried unanimously, and so for the purposes of a division, all names will be recorded. Okay. We'll now move to item 9.10, deferred commencement for a dwelling, Creek Road, Lot 2, DP 107236 Curwa. We have a recommendation. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Elstone, seconded Councillor Crisp. Would anyone like to speak for the motion? Councillor Elstone.
I just think, given it's we're only talking about 2%, I don't see any issue with it at all in terms of the minimum lot size. We'd have a lot around that'd be less than that. The argument makes sense, so I'm all for it.
Thank you. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Against?
I'd like to ask a question if I can.
Yes, Councillor Nichols.
We have a plan here. Is there a carport proposed in that plan? Because I can't see it. Thinking of more land use.
Oh, so it's a deferred commencement. There is no carport being proposed.
There's no carport. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Councillor Nichols, and for the purposes of a division, all votes will be recorded. Item 9.11, Wentworth Local Environmental Plan 2011, planning proposal to rezone RU5 land to E4 and introduce a 1,000 square metre minimum lot size at 48 Corbett Avenue, Baronga. We have a recommendation. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Crisp, seconded Councillor Nichols. Open for discussion or questions. Yes, Councillor Elstone.
The gateway determination was issued on the 19th of February. How long has it got to go, and what's the expected time frame to move through it?
Okay, so the planning proposal needs to be finalised by the 3rd of December this year.
30th of December, George?
3rd of December, 3 December.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank you, Acting Director. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the for the motion? Anyone wishing to speak against? I'm going to put the question, and in doing so, advise that as a planning matter, all votes will be recorded as a division. Those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 9.12, our favourite item. Project and works update for June 2024. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Rodder, seconded by Councillor Beaumont. Is there any questions? Councillor Beaumont.
Yes, just in relation to the Junction Island footpath, will the footpath trail be complete in time for the Junction Rally, which is a little over a week away? And the second part to my question is, does the footbridge comply with safety regulations? I was down there last evening for a walk, and the footbridge has a handrail, which is around about 1 metre height, and then one intervening rail between that handrail and the walkway. It just seems to me that that would be dangerous for children, toddlers particularly, or even women. Someone pushing a pram, could easily slip under that rail.
First part of the question, yes, the footpath will be completed, and the footpath is completed at the moment. There is some minor reinstatement works happening this week in and around the bridge and the commencement of the footpath. I take your second question on notice. From my understanding, it is compliant, but I will take your question on notice and confirm that, Councillor.
Yeah, I guess just to add to that, the footbridge obviously is over a waterway, and a toddler that fell off the bridge into the water would be in some difficult circumstances, I'd suggest. It definitely requires a look.
Will do.
Thank you. Councillor Nichols.
Mr Mayor, just a question really I'm not too sure to whom. The question is, why don't we have a night light, a general design? We've got every design under the sun sitting out there. Some of them function, some of them don't. The ones we've got on 381 and 382, which seem to be a standard type street light, appear to function well. They throw a light out. Some of those that look like flying saucers don't throw light anywhere, and some of them you need a candle to be able to see the light. So is it something we can look at? Because it's set there for a reason. It's dangerous to walk in dark places, and that's the reason I asked the question.
Take your question on notice, and I'll come back to you with the information as requested.
Thank you. And on the subject of lighting, I'm very pleased with your advice, Director Gunn, that the light installations will be commencing in Golgol and along the Midway path, the solar bollard lighting. Okay, is there any further questions? Councillor Rodder.
So that then can take that matter off the outstanding action items list. That would be amazing.
We're working our way through them judiciously. Any further questions? Yes, Councillor.
Oh, sorry, Mr Mayor. So in regards to the Wentworth Pooncarie Camp Kitchen, so we've settled on a design, Director Gunn, and when do we hope to get started after the races, which is September?
My understanding that's correct, yes. Yeah, so the design, everything is been agreed to by the users and the group, and so that will be proceeding on the footprint and the design based on the combined feedback from all the users. Yep.
That will be a much appreciated addition to the reserve up there.
Thank you. I put the question that we note the report. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. We will move to item 10. There are no notices of motion. Are there any questions with notice? Councillor Beaumont.
A couple of things. The 40 km/h speed zone signs have gone up through Wentworth, particularly in Sandwich Street between Darling and Adams Street, much to the appreciation of our community. However, I have had quite a few people express concern to me in relation to the size of the signs, but more to do with the visibility of the signs that have gone up. They're apparently hidden behind foliage. So I don't know whether we can have a look at that, please.
Yes, we are addressing that point. Also, there is pavement markings to reinforce the signage, so there will be 40 km/h pavement marking, which I understand will be in place on Wednesday next week as part of the project.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Gunn. The other matter I have is just something for information. There's a magazine out there published monthly by a company that distributes under the name of Afloat magazine. That's Afloat. Their June 2024 edition recognises the work of our very own model maker in Rodney Hobbs. So I'd just like to draw councillors' attention to that article and note that our local historian in Rodney Hobbs has been recognised. The article makes interesting reading in relation to Rodney's lifelong passion of collecting memorabilia and building to scale model rivercraft. It touches also on Wentworth's proud river history and our iconic location. So I'd just like to congratulate Rodney and say that this is an article well-deserved recognition of his life's work. I'll pass those around.
Thank you, Councillor Beaumont. Councillor Elstone.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a couple of things. One to Director of Planning. Is there any truth in the rumour that the planning portal process is going to get a bit easier?
Unfortunately, that's just a rumour, Councillor Assistant.
That's disappointing.
I didn't quite catch that. A vicious rumour?
He's agreeing it's just a rumour, Councillor Elstone.
Okay. Obviously, in the business I'm in, we get a few gutsteaks around things. I had one yesterday. Bloke going to build a $6,000 shed. It's costing over $1,000 in fees. He's lodged his DA in the middle of February, and he's about to get his construction certificate in the next week or so. So, just an example of time. And once you explain to people, well, because they all go crooked council, but once you explain that it's the portal process, most are accepting of it, but it is making it difficult, and particularly for those elderly people in the district that aren't too computer literate, it's near impossible. So I suppose one we just keep complaining about. Anyway, the other one is the flush down the Darling. It appears to have worked pretty well by the look of it. Anyone that's been down the junction will see the beautiful old chocolate brown Darling water come through. It looks magnificent at home here. It's a lot better than the green slime and the pig slop we were living in. So I would just think it would be good for council to perhaps those groups that were involved, which was the guys from Sunset Strip and the Menindee townsfolk, our own Southwestern water users with Rachel Storm, Tom Douglas, Howard Jones, etc., and Mark King. Just to thank you to them for the work they put in, and to you, Mr Mayor. I know you were instrumental in pulling a few meetings together and achieve what we did. And a pat on the back to Andrew McConville, the CEO of MDBA, who certainly got stuck in at the higher level and got the thing organised. So, pretty good result. I think we're disappointed in the amount of time it took, and we need to work towards making that process a fair bit simpler, but we did get there, and yeah, it truly is. And anyone you talk to up and down the river, they're so relieved that they're living with a bit of quality water. It's really good.
Thanks, Councillor Elstone. I agree, we'll get some thank you letters written off, and it's certainly a great win for the community. Councillor Crisp. Nothing. Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I would just like to thank Council, Kumiala Club and the Wentworth Community Bank for their support of the Why Not Winter in Wentworth campaign. So 5th of July to the end of August, there'll be a series of events across the Shire, and I encourage everyone to jump on and have a look at the fabulous experiences that can be had during that campaign, and encourage people to Why Not Winter in Wentworth. Just on the event theme, so Smoke on the Water, which is a council-funded event, will be held at our beautiful, iconic Australian Inland Botanic Gardens, the 13th and 14th of July, and encourage people to experience the best of beer and meat, smoked meats.
Thank you, Councillor Rodder. And did you have a question with that?
No, just more of a thank you to council.
Thank you. Councillor Nichols.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with Councillor Elstone over there. I know regarding planning times it takes. I know of some people living in a caravan. They've lived in a caravan for some months. This DA been in for that some months, and now they're like frozen sardines. So it's something that the more we can do to get those things more quickly through, it's going to benefit our people living out there, especially older people. Now, the question I want to know is, off the Mildura Bridge, I'm told it's a clean-up. They're cleaning up the area where the service station was. Quite frankly, it's a disgrace. Is there some way we can hurry that clean-up if it's not going to be, like everybody thinks, a Big Mac or big something? Because that's been ongoing for quite some time.
It's a different one, Councillor Nichols. We'll try and negotiate it or work out a time frame with the contractor, who's a local contractor performing the duties on behalf of Caltex. So no, we'll reach out to the local contractor and see if we can find a time frame associated with it. As far as I'm aware, if I can pose a question to George, the consent's only for the demolition. We don't have any applications for construction or building of anything?
No, the construction is only for the demolition of the existing fuel station.
It's distraction to those coming off the bridge and coming around also, for some sort of accident.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, given the length of construction jobs, I thought it was going pretty quickly in terms of removing the tanks and rehabbing the site, but yeah. Thank you. Councillor Rodder.
It was sad to see that historic fig tree removed from the rubber tree removed from the side of that service station building. But just in regards to the remediation of fuel stations is quite an involved process with contaminated soil removal, etc., etc. So I'm sure they're moving as fast as they can.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. We will move to item 11, if someone wishes to. Councillor Crisp.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that a council adjourns to closed session, the recording of the meeting be suspended and the members of the press and public be excluded from the closed session, and that access to the correspondence and reports relating to the items considered during the course of the closed session be withheld unless declassified by a separate resolution. This action is taken in accordance with section 10A(2) of the Local Government Act 1993 as... thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crisp. Is the motion seconded? Councillor Elstone.
Can we have a short break, Mr Mayor?
All those Thank you, councillors. I'd now invite the General Manager to report on the outcomes of the closed council session.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. During our closed session of business tonight, Council considered 5 items, the first one being 12.1, the provision of cleaning services for public amenities and transport for New South Wales rest areas. It was resolved that Council, in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government Regulation 2021, Section 178(1)A, accepts the tender from Carrum Cleaning Services and subsequently authorise the Mayor and myself to sign the contract documentation and affix the seal for the recommended contractor to carry out all works as specified for an amount of $221,430.55. In relation to 12.2, being a Rumpo Road reconstruction, hire of tip truck and super dog combinations, it was resolved that Council, in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government General Regulation 2005, Section 178(1)A, award the following tenders authorising the use of contractors in accordance with the evaluation score as nominated, that KW Earth Moving be awarded to operate 8 items of plant at the 28-tonne capacity, Bot Earth Moving be endorsed to use a 50-tonne machine, Balpunga Enterprises 128-tonne machine, and Dotty Dirt Bulk Haulage, 2 items of plant be awarded for his use. In relation to 12.3, the Waste Management Consultancy Services, it was resolved that Council, in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government General Regulation 2021, accepts a tender from Waste Management Services Proprietary Limited and subsequently authorises the Mayor and myself to sign the contract documentation and affix a seal for the recommended contractor to carry out all works as specified at an hourly rate of $297 per hour, GST inclusive. Item 12.4 was the consideration of the Baronga landfill expansion. It was resolved that Council, in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government General Regulation 2021, Section 178(1)A, accepts the tenders from Waters Excavations Proprietary Limited and subsequently authorise the Mayor and General Manager to sign the contract documentation and affix the seal for the recommended contractor to carry out all works as specified for $10,750,000, $222.91, GST inclusive. Do I need to do that? Yeah. Further to that item, the Council approves a contingency allowance of $1,075,022 inclusive of GST. The last item considered tonight in the closed council business was the Baronga Landfill Expansion Project Management. It was resolved that, in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government General Regulation 2021, Section 178(1)A, accepts the tender from Tonkin Consulting Proprietary Limited, subsequently authorising the Mayor and myself to sign the contract documentation and affix the seal for the recommended contractor to carry out all works as specified at an hourly rate listed in the tender schedule for a total of $307,950, GST inclusive, and further to that, the Council approves a contingency allowance of $30,795, GST inclusive. And that concludes the business conducted in our closed session of Council this evening.
Thank you, General Manager, and that concludes this evening's meeting. I report that our next ordinary meeting of Council is Wednesday evening, the 17th of July, and as we move to the end of a financial year and the start of another, can I just thank all Council staff for the projects, large and small, that have been concluded this year in our ops plan, and wish them all the best for the next year. Thank you.